Welcome to Make Today Count, your 60 minutes of fresh conversation served up to inform, educate and inspire your personal brand. I'm your host Ross Dean, and each episode I chat to thought leaders, influencers and experts in their game who all have one thing in common: the desire to go the extra mile, pushing against the status quo to create a richer life for both themselves and those around them. Powered by compassion and driven by the need to leave the world that little bit better than when they arrived. Okay, hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Make Today Count. An amazing guest for you today, coach and business growth specialist Phil Budd. How you doing?
Really well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me along.
No worries. We find ourselves, a lot of business owners in quite a strange situation. We have done for the past year. And again, we find ourselves in another lockdown, the third lockdown here in the UK. And I got in touch because I think for a lot of business owners, these lockdown periods have had some time, given them some time to kind of reflect on their business, maybe plan new things for their business. And I know certainly I have in mine. And I think a lot of people will be starting afresh going forward, as and when we're able to do so, work more in those areas where we can't work at the moment. And I think business coaching is something that's that people kind of think about all the time. Is it the right thing for me? Should I be getting involved? Should I have someone support me in my business? So I really wanted to get you on to have a chat about that and go through some of those things, because I think we can answer some really important questions for people. And really sort of set the scene as to what business coaching is like when you're working with someone. And, through working with, the colleagues that I work with, both locally, you're the guy to speak to. So I'm super excited about having you on today.
Excellent. Now looking forward to the discussion.
So what I'd love you to do, if people haven't come across your work before, Phil, what I'd love you to do, could you just give us a little bit of background about kind of your background in business and kind of how you got to where you are today, please?
Yeah, sure. So I live just outside Bury St Edmunds, lived in Suffolk for the last 6 years. My business career, if we want to start off with that, has been really focused around sales and marketing. So we'll go back a little bit of a way. I started off in telesales, developed into becoming a field sales, worked within logistics, worked for some large logistics and distribution firms, and then transitioned into senior account management and senior sales roles in the print industry and print and customer communications. And from there, sort of then naturally developed into sales management. And my last role was with a large business as a sales director, managing a large team of sales individuals and developing them in terms of performance. Owning my own business had never really been a consideration. I had gone through the path of developing, like I say, my sales career, as it were, back then. But a couple of things really key happened to me personally, which made me, sit back and reflect, which I think is often what happens to a lot of business owners or entrepreneurs as to why they set their business up. Things change in their life and they really evaluate, do I want to continue to work for someone or do I want to have my own business? And at the time when I was a sales director, I was in Bristol once a week. I was in Sunderland. I was traveling all over the place and I had a young family. And I thought, you know what? I've got an opportunity here maybe to reevaluate and do something different. So started looking at what I wanted to do. And there comes a challenge in itself. What do I set a business up in? Where's my natural skill set? And someone had said to me very early on in my career that I seem to have a natural leaning towards developing people. And particularly in one of my roles within sales, one of the key parts that I was involved in was recruiting and developing graduates into senior sales roles. And I loved it. I really, really enjoyed that personal development of them and also what it taught me in terms of my own personal development as well. So coaching therefore seemed a natural fit. What I didn't want to do though is just lean on my own expertise. I wanted a system and a process for doing that. And so I looked around at different coaching organizations and Action Coach, being the worldwide leader that it is in coaching, seemed again a really natural fit to give me the systems and processes within coaching, but then combine that with my experience in developing people and also what I've learned along the way within business as well. So I've now been coaching in East Anglia for coming up to 3 years in April this year. Currently coaching 20 plus business owners from across the region. And I also have a growth program for micro businesses that's very close to my heart, because I think when you're a micro business, getting to that next level can be particularly challenging as well. So I coach a wide range of businesses that are turning over millions and millions and millions, down to businesses that are literally just starting out. So there's a real mix in terms of the type of businesses that I work with.
It's really interesting that you say that. A lot of the people that I speak to on the podcast, they have kind of this kind of aha or kind of a light bulb moment in their kind of early life or their business life, when it's just kind of say exactly what you were saying, how it just, is this what I want to do, and am I best fit in some other sort of sector or area of work? And in those, when you're working back in sales, in those companies, were you kind of developing other people then within a sort of an internal team, or how did you kind of get the bug really for developing people?
Yeah, so we had gone through a stage within one business where we were looking at the type of sales team that we were developing. And I think all businesses that have ran sales teams, you can end up paying a lot of money for salespeople, but not necessarily always getting what you want from those individuals. Just paying a high salary doesn't mean you always get a high quality person. And so I think that we went through a process of evaluating that and saying, well, sales can be taught. And I firmly believe that I learned that as a skill set. Yes, maybe there were some natural skills that I had that made me successful in sales, but it was a skill that I was taught by some great coaches and great trainers and great leaders over the years. So it was in that process that when we started to define how you develop someone into a good salesperson, I really got the bug for coaching and development, because in that, it was more than just telling someone how to be a good salesperson or mentoring them and showing them. It was actually giving them the skills for themselves to be able to do it. And what gives me huge satisfaction now is when I'm still connected to a number of those people that I developed. Now that I've seen them develop into more successful individuals, that's incredibly satisfying for me. As a manager back then, to see them develop. Now, clearly I'm a coach on a full-time basis, but really back then what I was doing was coaching. I didn't really realize it maybe fully at the time. I didn't really fully appreciate coaching at that point, but it was coaching.
Excellent. And I think, as we said at the top of the podcast, I think, a lot of people are maybe starting businesses now, due to the lockdown, and they've had lots of time to kind of think about, is this the right thing for me? Do I want to branch out into other areas? And as I say, business coaching, I think, is something that it's people are aware of, but they don't really know sometimes as to what it really kind of involves. For your, I guess your sort of elevator pitches, it were, if you're stuck in a lift with someone and someone asked you what you did, what exactly would you say was your role as a business coach, Phil?
So for me, very simply, coaching is all about unlocking people's potential to maximize their own performance. That is really what it's about. It's about, when I'm coaching a business owner, yes, it's about coaching the business. Yes, it's about delivering great results, but it's focusing on the individual and the performance that they have themselves, but also the performance of the business to drive better results. So as a coach, by providing the outside perspective, and a key part of coaching is, in a lot of instances, not coming from the industry in order to give that true outside perspective. It's looking in on the business and looking in on that performance and giving the clarity to the individual that they wouldn't normally get if they were to reflect on that on their own. So that outside perspective helps them get clarity, helps them get focus as to what they need to improve to get the results that they want.
Yeah. And I guess as well, you spoke about, currently working with over 20 odd different businesses. I'm guessing in a wide ranging group of different types of businesses. Why do people tend to usually come for you to help? Are they kind of at a key stage in their business, or is it kind of one of those things where they've taken it so far and they're not sure where to go next? Is there kind of a trend in that when people come and see you?
There's a real mix, and I like the variety. Some coaches create a niche for themselves and focus on a specific type of business or a business at a certain stage. For me, I love the variety. So some of the businesses that I'm coaching are wanting to work towards a 5-year plan to exit the business, and that's either to get passive income or to sell it. Other businesses maybe have got to that crucial point where they want to take it and really scale it. Maybe they're at like $500,000 turnover and they want to make it a multi-million-pound business. Or some businesses might be even smaller than that, but want to grow quicker and get their results more quickly, rather than kind of waiting 10 years to achieve what they want in terms of their goals and their dreams. So I think that everyone comes into coaching for different reasons, and I think that is a really important part of the way that I approach coaching. My clients define the outcomes they want to achieve. It's not for me as the coach to define their outcomes. What I do is just help them get there more quickly.
And when you kind of break that down into, sort of the day to day, as it were, I think a lot of people are not quite sure as to kind of how the whole kind of situation works. So what kind of things do you predominantly help your clients with? 'Cause I know you spoke about kind of, I guess, letting them guide you through, where they want to be. But what kind of things can you kind of help someone with if they were to sort of work with you?
Yeah, I think the first point is defining what they want from the business.
Yeah.
And so often when I talk to a business owner, they've got an idea on what they want to achieve. They don't necessarily know the reasons why, and maybe it's not particularly specific as to what they want. So one of the things that I do as a coach is help them get clarity around what's in their head and actually get that documented in terms of a business plan. And we spend quite a bit of time on this. I do this as a whole day strategy session. First of all, when I start off with a client, but I also revisit every year with my clients in addition to the coaching that I do to them. So clarity as to what we're trying to achieve, clarity for them personally. I think that this is also a big thing within business, is that when you've been in business for 4 or 5 years, it's very easy to lose sight of the reasons why you went into it for the reasons, first of all. Yeah. So, why, in the first instance, what was the purpose of this business? What were you trying to achieve personally? And then making sure the business is aligned to deliver what you want personally. And often business owners struggle to get that clarity on their own. So that's one of the key components, first of all, with the client that I really work on, is getting that clarity of purpose. We then create some clear goals for the longer term, 5 to 10 year goals out. But then we bring that down to key milestones, because one of the challenges when you have maybe big aspirations for your business is it can overwhelm yourself, because that can seem a long way from where you're currently at. So if you're a $500,000 turnover business that wants to get to 5 million, that 5-year goal can seem huge. So what we've got to do is then scale that back and say, right, what are the milestones over the next 5 years that we need to achieve? And then what are the strategies that are going to help you in order to get that? And again, what that does is bring clarity to the business owner and their team as to what they then need to focus on.
Absolutely. I think, that first stage of just setting clear intentions, I think you'd agree is just so important. And I think for a lot of people, especially if their business is born out of something that they love, something maybe that, has prompted them to change careers, they're sort of more interested in and concentrate in doing the thing that they need to do for their business, but not necessarily taking a step back and sort of looking at that bigger picture. How kind of sort of revolutionary has that been for the people that you work with? I'm guessing that when they have that one day sit down session where they kind of plan everything out, they must have their minds blown a lot of the time, I would imagine.
Yeah, and it's I think when you start asking questions about what you want from your business, as you get older, it does become harder to answer. I've got a 5-year-old son. If you ask him what he wants when he gets older, when you're younger, you speak real clarity around it. Life's simpler. But as you get older and you've had setbacks, you've had successes, we use this terminology as adults where we kind of manage our expectations and we don't think that big. So it is a breakthrough moment. And for me, the way that I work with my coaching is I'm very supportive with my clients as well as challenging. For me, it's very much about having my clients' backs. I'm there to support them. We're trying to achieve these results together. Yes, it is about accountability. Yes, it is about challenging. But at the moment, what a lot of people need is support and a good outside perspective to help them get their head clear of the fog that kind of, with COVID and everything else going on, can blur their vision as to what they want to achieve. I think the other thing that is important to add within this is that I've always come from a commercial background. Coaching for me is not fluffy. It's got to have a very clear objective as to what it needs to achieve, and there has to be a very clear return on investment. Otherwise, there's no point doing it. So in defining the goals for the business owner and for their teams, what we're able then to do in a very objective way is understand how coaching is going to deliver a return on investment. So the client is confident when I work with them that actually this is worthwhile and it's actually going to help them achieve their goals.
Yeah. You mentioned something really important there in regards to the support that you give, because, especially I think with people that start businesses on their own, and I know this from experience when I started my own, a few years back, in that, it can be quite insular when you're working on your own. And, if you're, if you're doing everything yourself, maybe you're doing the sort of the account stuff, you're doing the bookkeeping, you're doing all these different things. It can be quite interesting. You don't really have people to sort of bounce ideas off or get some sound knowledge off. That must be huge for the people that you work with, just to have that kind of sounding board. Just say, look, I'm doing this. I've got this idea. Is this the right thing for me? Because I don't think a lot of people, have that. Would you agree?
I would agree with that. And for me, coaching goes beyond outside my coaching sessions.
Mm.
It isn't kind of like, once you've had your time with me, your time's up. I'm coaching to outcomes. I'm coaching a lot of instances to high growth. So sometimes my clients will, message me and say, Phil, look, can we just have a 10-minute call? I've got this going through my mind. I just want to get some perspective on it, and absolutely we'll do that. Or they'll send me something that they just want me to critique. It could be a new template for a sales proposal. It could be some plans around HR and organizational structures, what changes, whatever it might be. But you're absolutely right. When you are a single business owner in particular, no board around you, and if you start scaling a business and building a team, it can feel very insular. And let's be open about it. A lot of our partners end up getting sick to death of us talking about the business, so we can't talk to them about it. And often, because there's emotion involved there, we can't always have a very objective discussion around the business. And so that very impartial view or outside perspective is incredibly valuable to single business owners.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. I know that there's times when I've kind of come back and maybe we've been sat down for dinner and I was like, I've got this really good idea for something. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's lovely. Sort of thing.
A lot of people relate to that.
But it's like, this is really important to me, no, to totally agree. And also, with the best will in the world, friends, family, people that are close to you, they generally want you to do well. So they will give you feedback that's encouraging, but may not be the sort of feedback that you need, for some of this stuff. So, I believe it's super important to have that sounding board, whether it's a business coach, whether it's, a networking group or peers that you have, just someone to kind of bounce some of these ideas off. What I'm hearing from what you're saying, Phil, is that I think as well as kind of managing and being able to kind of plan the business going forward, my hunch is that also there's probably quite a lot of offshoots and other benefits that people get once they get involved with coaching. And what I mean by that is, we know ourselves that when things are going well in one area, often there's transformations in other areas. So example might be that, working with yourself, being able to plan their business more may alleviate some of that stress from them, may be able to spend more time with other people. And I think sometimes people look at business coaching as like, oh, it's just for the business. And although that's the kind of the key factor, that's what we're looking at. Would you agree that there's often lots of kind of knock-on effects, some really positive things that come out of both, family life and, time with friends and just freeing up more time that maybe they wouldn't have had before?
Absolutely. And their personal relationships improve, because one of the things that I do within my coaching is there's kind of two parts to my coaching. There's the transactional side, which I would describe as being the things that are going to help grow the business. Okay. The things that are going to help improve sales, marketing, operations. The transformational side is more about the transition the person goes through as an individual and the behaviors and how they change. We start to get more control of their time. They're more present with their family. This absolutely has a knock-on effect with their partners. And one of the things that I encourage is when I'm doing the strategy day with my clients once a year, is we actually get their partners involved in the day. And the reason being in that is that if we're defining personal goals for the business owner, their partner needs to be part of it. And often what I see with business owners is because the business is often run by the business owner, their partner might be a silent director. The partner can feel a little bit isolated from the business as to why their partner's spending so much time in the business, and there can be a bit of a disconnect. So by bringing the partner into the discussion about coaching and getting clarity about what we're trying to do with this business, that creates a tighter unit in their relationship as well. I'm not a relationship counselor or a marriage counselor, just to be clear, but for me, absolutely, business for me should give you more life. And so when I get messages from my clients saying that, they've had a great holiday with their family that they've not had before prior to coaching, that gives me a huge amount of satisfaction, because the business is a mechanism to give them more for them and their families. That could be more financially, that could be more in terms of time. So you're absolutely right that coaching isn't just about making a better business. It's making a better business that's going to make them a better person and have a better life.
Yeah, I think that's huge. It's that communication, especially if you've got a partner or husband or wife or whoever you have at home. That those times when you have to go and work a little bit later. Maybe you're back later from the office. Maybe you've got to work a weekend sometimes. And with the best will in the world, I think in that moment you give your best response as to why you have to do that or why you believe you need to do that. But sometimes it's not communicated in a way where if you had the time to step back and communicate it more openly and freely, sometimes we just doesn't come out. It's just like, oh, I just need to do this now. And I think that communication is so key with the people that you love, and like you say, getting these ducks in order in one area often alleviates so much stress in other areas. For example, in my own situation, I know that when I started to look after my own health and fitness more, everything started to change in other areas, and it was really interesting. It was one of those things that I'd been putting off for ages, and that kind of, we moved towards pleasure and away from pain, and it was just one of those things that once I started to get in that momentum, once I started to work with someone that was a leader in their field that knew what they were doing, everything in other areas started to change. Confidence grows, other things start to grow, and you must see that in the people that you work with as well. It must be really nice to see some people kind of flourish as they kind of move through the coaching with you.
Absolutely. And for a lot of the clients I've been coaching now for a number of years, they're now transitioning to a coaching mentality themselves, which for me is really important as a leader and as a manager. That the skill set that coaching teaches you is the ability to get people to be independent of you as a business owner. And this is a key challenge that a lot of business owners experience, is that even if they get to a reasonable size as a business, the business still very much reliant on them. They may have a team around them, but the team are reliant on them. And the way to transition out of that is to develop a coaching habit as a leader. And so what's really satisfying to see is a lot of my clients are becoming great coaches. They're developing their team in a different way. They're not just giving instructions and telling them what to do. They're asking better questions. And as a result of that, the owner's getting more time. That business is truly getting to a point where the business works without them, which again is incredibly satisfying to see.
Yeah. And I think also as now what's different now than maybe 10 or so years ago is that these small business owners are effectively their own media companies. They're their own brands as well. So there's that also that confidence that comes with that. For someone working on their own, they have kind of a duty to be the face behind the business of what they're doing. And the way the media works now, in that there's so many of these rich different avenues where they can kind of show who they are and what they are. That's very different than maybe how it was 10, 20 years ago, in that we could go about our business, we could be a business, as it were, and it wasn't so much sort of client facing in that way. Do many of your clients have sort of challenges with some of that sort of stuff, being the kind of face for the business and what they do?
It can happen. I think that it can happen a lot, particularly with marketing agencies, particularly when people want to deal with the owner of the business or the founder of the organization. It is a mindset shift that I do coach my clients through, and it is a case of letting go. Because for me, ultimately, the definition of any business is when it works without you. That ultimately, otherwise what you really have done is created self-employment for yourself. You've in effect left a company, built a business, but then got yourself a job within the business. And that for me is not really the definition of what a business is really about. So there is a transition period to go through, and acceptance that the business needs to be bigger than just you as an individual. Branding is really important, and we see that on social media in terms of having that personal brand out there. And that's true. A lot of people that become successful within business, often they're posting on social media about their experience in business, and that does attract business and customers. But we've got to bring it back to the core of what we're trying to build here, and build an asset, a business that ultimately one day you can sell or delivers you passive income. And the only way that's going to work and get its true value is if the business isn't solely reliant on you.
I guess that's a bit of a mind-blowing moment for people, because I think a lot of people just think that they perform a role in their business and they will go about that for until they retire, and that's kind of like how life is. Is it something that people kind of think about, or is it something that you've found that you have to kind of educate and nurture them through that? Because it's quite a different way of thinking, isn't it?
It is. You do need to support a client through that, because that is, letting go is hard. It should not be underestimated. It isn't about just saying to a client, coach them through it and say you need to let go, and suddenly they let go. This is a process. When you created a business and you cared for it and you put your life savings into it and you've gone through adversity, dipped into overdrafts, whatever it might be, put your house on the line. There is an incredible emotional attachment with running a business. So there's a process of really untangling that and getting the clarity to view business in a different way. And some don't want to view it that way. And that's perfectly fine. If they want to have a business that is more like a lifestyle business where it is reliant on them, then that's their objective. But for me as a coach, it is about trying to bring them out of that and trying to change that mindset if that's what they want.
I want to talk about trust, Phil, because I think for anyone that's starting a business or going through the early stages, or maybe at different stages in their business, if they've been working on their own predominantly, or maybe in a small team, there's a huge amount of trust, I think, that especially in those first stages of letting people into the business. It's something maybe that we've struggled through, with the best intentions, but maybe it's not working out for us. And bringing someone in, especially at the level of kind of like a business coach, where I'm guessing that it's opening them up to the information around the business, all the back information. How do you kind of talk to clients about that? Because I'm guessing that a lot of people initially may have some reservations around, maybe feel a little bit uncomfortable about starting to share that information with someone else where they haven't done it before.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. In a lot of instances, before I work with a client, they've already had quite a lot of interaction with me. And what I mean by that is they would have attended some of my webinars, maybe been to some of the events that I've run, watched some of the stuff on my YouTube channel, seen what I've done on social media. I think you start to build trust that way. But before I take a client on, we spend quite a bit of time with each other, actually agreeing whether there's a good fit. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and I'm fine with that. And I encourage people to make sure they have a coach that is the right fit for them and their business based on where they want to go. And a key part for me personally, when I'm looking at potentially taking on a new client, is whether I really care about their business. And for me, that's a really important part, because as a coach, yes, it's about being independent from the business, and yes, it's giving an outside perspective. But when I go into a working relationship with a business, I really want to care about their goals, and I want to care about what they want to create. And that in itself, from businesses that I work through and some of the feedback that I've received, really comes through. Some of the testimonials that I've had and feedback has been, Phil really cares about our business. And that for me is a really important part of being a coach. Yes, it's about getting the results, but I want to see them achieve that. I'm in their corner. And so within the process that leads up to them, a potential client becoming a client, that needs to come through. They need to feel comfortable that actually, Phil has got my back, I can sense it. And then we've got some other things around that we can do practically if there's any concern, which is around non-disclosure agreements. I don't share information about my clients outside in the business community unless they give permission to do so. Some clients are very kindly shared their success stories, but I don't share openly who I work with. And for me, that's an important part, because I need to maintain that trust and integrity within the business community. I think trust is not to be underestimated within a working relationship. So I think it is an important question to ask. I think it's something you feel, but then has to be substantiated with some of the other things I've mentioned today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think you touched upon it there, in that it's just, I think for a lot of people, I guess it forms part of those sessions when you're sitting down with someone, seeing what their clear goals are. And it's clear from having the conversation with you today, Phil, that, that kind of connection to your clients is huge. And I think we can all agree with that. If we all have, inquiries come through from clients when sometimes it's not a good fit, and it's being okay with that and sitting with that and thinking that, am I the best fit for this business? And it's okay if you're not. I have this conversation with people, with the people that I work with, when they're maybe in the first stage of business and they're busily trying to work with everyone that they can, when they're not maybe taking a step back and sort of thinking, am I the right best fit for this person? And if I'm not, is someone else a better fit for them? It's perfectly okay to go through that and kind of be comfortable with that.
I think the other thing on that, if I can jump in,
yeah,
I think
of course.
Another thing I was going to add to that is the importance as a coach of not judging the individual. I
Mm.
think that's another key way you build trust, because there's nothing worse than raising a difficult subject or something you're concerned about, and then the other person then judging you for it. You know, that means that I'm not going to be approachable as a coach. So one of the things that's really important is that, you know, it's not about my view and what I would do is completely irrelevant in the situation. It's about what's right for the client. And you've got to remain independent. Sometimes clients will ask me for my view, and I'm not the type of coach that will constantly ask questions and not give their view. If they ask for it, I will give it. But it's making sure that you're remaining impartial and not judging the individual, because that will break the trust.
Yeah, definitely. So we've spoken about trust, and I think that's a question that I think often comes up when they're sort of maybe considering business coaching. Are there other kind of misconceptions or preconceptions that people have around business coaching? Maybe, you know, in the conversations that you've had with people earlier on, their preconceptions of what they think it's going to be like versus actually what it is like. Have you come across those at all?
I'll share some of mine, and I'll be really open and candid about it before coaching. I nearly didn't become a coach because of some of my preconceptions. I thought that coaching was sometimes about individuals that can't do, but like, if you can't do, teach scenario. I don't mean that disrespectfully. You know, people that can't run a business basically become a coach and try and tell other people how to run it. So I had that preconception myself. I think that the other preconception is that one size fits all type approach, that what I do with every client is the same. That's not the case. Sometimes I think people can feel that coaching is a bit like business therapy. And look, there is an element sometimes where you're talking to clients in a very confidential way about some of their concerns, where you're not going into that therapy type mode, but you are providing a bit of a sounding board. But it's certainly not that. I know where my skill set lies, and it's certainly not as a therapist. So I think that there's elements where people feel it's like therapy, counselling, that sort of thing. Keep asking the question why, and it's that kind of feel to it. Some have grasped what coaching is. I still think that actually not that many people are aware of what coaching is really about. It's surprising actually that, you know, when I talk to businesses for the first time, I say, have you come across coaching? And sometimes they've never come across it still. So I still think there's quite a lot of education for us as coaches, and I include the whole coaching community in that, in terms of providing awareness about really the value of coaching and what it's really about. So they're kind of some of the sort of preconceptions I would say that have been there. And then I think when people meet you for the first time and sort of understand my style and what I'm about, a lot of those quite quickly go away.
And I guess also that, you know, through those conversations that you have in those early stages, you know, some of the reasons why people want to work with coaches is to help them navigate through blocks that they have in different areas. Which sort of, what ones of those have you come across before? I'm guessing things like, I know coaching maybe is too expensive for me. I can't afford coaching. You know, we've spoken before about, I don't want to share a business with, you know, a stranger or someone coming in. Are there any kind of common blocks that kind of people have? I guess reservations initially about working with a coach.
I think one of the reservations that people have, but they don't always acknowledge, but certainly I can sense it when I'm having a discussion with them, is the piece around personal development and about being uncomfortable during learning. And I think that's one of the blocks that often happens with people not wanting to consider coaching, or maybe thinking about it but not going ahead, is that this is all about self-development and business development. And I think that what we get used to as adults as we grow up is we like to be comfortable. You know, we like, you know, certain types of destinations we go to because we're used to it. We don't like making ourselves feel uncomfortable. And I think that is probably one of the biggest reasons why people don't come into coaching, which is that actually they're quite happy with what they've got. And that, again, that's perfectly fine. Most people that come into coaching are looking to be challenged, pushed, and go through a sense of uncomfortableness in order to have a breakthrough and take their personal performance and their business performance to the next level. So I say that's one of the key things. I think in terms of coaching fee, you know, for my own business, I have a range of coaching programs out there for the very reason that if someone wants to be coached, I have something that's available for what they need. And outside of that, if they want something bespoke building, then we do that. If they want to be coached by me, that's the first question. The next question is, well, what's the right coaching for you based on where you want to go and what you want to achieve? And that's a case of then adapting the coaching program based on what they need.
Yeah. And I think that's why, why it's so important, like you say, why you have these conversations before anything's put in place. I think maybe the misconception is that you'll go and have a meeting with someone and you'll sign up on there, and then that kind of maybe think of buyer's remorse afterwards, or that kind of thing. And I think from what you're saying is that it's so important and integral to have those early stages where you kind of sit down with someone and saying, look, this is what I want to achieve. Are you the right fit for me? And just kind of go through that and just have a general chat. I'm guessing what I'm hearing from our conversation today, Phil, is that, you take a lot of pride and time in those early stages of getting to know a business. And I can tell from what you're saying that that's so important to you.
It really is, and I make it clear when I first get an inquiry through. I say to them, look, let's talk about it. But if the outcome is that we don't work together, I'm perfectly fine with that, and if you realize that coaching's not right for you now, that again is a good outcome if we get that clarity for you, and sometimes that could be, in a lot of instances, before I take on a client, I'm spending maybe 2.5 hours with them, which I don't charge for, in order for us to get to know each other. And they'll probably maybe attended to my webinars again and seen what I'm like on that, what some of my client success stories and what we've done around that. So I think that kind of getting to know each other stage is a really important part. And if we get, like I say, get the clarity that I'm not the right person to work with them, that's fine with me. Sometimes those individuals come back at a later stage, sometimes they don't. But we've got to explore whether there is a good working relationship. And for me, it's a two-way interview process, really. They need to suss out whether I'm the right coach for them. I need to work out whether they're the right client, and if I can generate return on investment. Even if a potential client wants coaching, but I can't see how we're going to get that return, I will say that to them, because for me, my reputation locally about caring for businesses and doing the right thing for them, not the right thing for me, just taking my fee and saying I'm happy, that for me doesn't sit right for me. It's about always doing the right thing for the client. Yeah,
that's great. And that's really refreshing, to kind of hear that response, because it's not the same for everyone, I think, there'll be a lot of people listening to this and they're kind of think, well, maybe coaching is something that I want to kind of look at. And maybe it's something that I kind of want to have a conversation about. What kind of advice would you generally give for someone when looking for a business coach? What are good things to kind of look out for when, start on those conversations?
I would say a few things. I would say, look at what clients say about them. Look at independent people within the business community as well as to what they say about the coach. Sense as well what the values of the coach are, what the principles that the coach lives by. Yes, you can look at things like qualifications, which I think are practical, but I think that the coach and coachee fit has to be around a lot of it about values and about, are you aligned in how you're going to work together? So qualifications come into it, don't get me wrong. And just for clarity, I am a qualified coach outside of the experience that I've got. But looking at the success stories, looking at as well the systems and processes about how a coach goes about coaching. For me, structure to coaching is incredibly important. We have to have clear outcomes ahead of a coaching session. We have to be working towards a plan. We have to be working towards clear outcomes. And for me as well, getting feedback from my clients about what they're getting out of coaching is really important to make sure that this relationship is working. That's what I hold myself account to. So I think looking at how a coach conducts himself around that will tell you a lot about what you're really going to get out of coaching.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, in that, just go and speak to other people that have worked with someone. It's the same for any business, I know that's, with the work that I do, I direct people to other people that work with me, because they're your best kind of allies in that, they have, on the ground, kind of like experience in what it's like to work with you day to day. And that's the best kind of advertising that you can get. Also kind of for the day-to-day of working with a coach and kind of that process that you take someone through, I just want to give a little bit of a loose breakdown about what someone can expect. So you spoke before about initially it's kind of those conversations around, are you a good fit for them, and kind of talking about the business and their aspirations, and sharing your views as well. What generally is the kind of the timeline going forward after that?
Yeah, so how it works is, if someone wants to request a discussion with me, the first thing is I send over an overview questionnaire that I ask them to complete. It's about 20 questions. That is for my benefit, but it's also for them to self-reflect about their business, to where they're at, and again, starting to get them some clarity around what they want out of coaching. Also, for me, it's a little bit of a mini test to see how serious they are about the process, because if they're not prepared to fill out a very brief questionnaire, I get a sense of how serious they are about really personal development and building their business. So after they filled out that questionnaire, we then have a half an hour call where we start to examine some of the points, what they've completed, some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, the areas they're looking to improve. And that again helps me to then think about, okay, what may be a certain areas of the business that we really need to focus on, or focus on within them when we have our next discussion. So questionnaire completed, half an hour call. We then have an hour and a half session on Zoom where we go into specific areas that have come out of the questionnaire and come out of the call. So yes, there's all areas of the business that we will consider, but we really fine tune it on some specific areas. So they start to get some clarity on not just where the symptoms of the problems are, but where the real root causes are. And in that process, what they're starting to sense is my style of coaching, but also what we would cover within coaching if they became a client of mine. Now, in that scenario, once we've had that session, if in certain situations we need a little bit more time, depending on the complexity of the business and the size of the business, we will both agree whether we need to put a bit more time in to agree whether we need to do that before they're making the decision. In many instances, at the end of that session, the hour and a half session on Zoom, most instances people turn around and say, look, I'm ready to make a decision. I get a good sense from working with you that, you've got my back and that you're going to help me take the business to the next level. And in which case we then agree the coaching program that's going to be right for them. But like I say, if we get to the end of that hour and a half, we need a bit more time to work out whether we're going to be a good fit to work together, then I'd rather we allocate more time than them rushing to making a decision and then regretting that they've gone into coaching. It has to be about what's right for them.
Yeah. And I'm guessing, these sort of over the current year, the past year, should I say, I guess maybe people think, is it a good time to work with a business coach? Because obviously, like we would do before, we can't meet in person, but you mentioned there about kind of using Zoom and that kind of thing. And I'm guessing that's works really well with people's time, and it's kind of more convenient sometimes than meeting in person, isn't it?
It is. And, my business used to be all face-to-face coaching, and I have transitioned to Zoom, and I've taken some valuable lessons out there as a coach, that actually is much more productive. We can have valuable sessions. For me, the relationship piece is still very important. So when we were outside of lockdown, I would meet clients, and if it was appropriate to do so, for lunch, and we would still keep that face-to-face relationship going, because I do think that there's something in that we've got to maintain. All of my clients get together as well. We have events throughout the year that I lay on. I do a gratitude event once a year, which is to say thank you to my clients, and usually that involves a beer or a glass of wine. We can't do that at the moment. So hopefully maybe we can do that towards the back end of the year. But there's a lot of other things that I do outside of my core coaching that I think is also important around building a business community, and also for them to get other forms of education. So I arrange for guest speakers to come in, some people that are quite well known, in terms of those authors that have written books. And that again is all to supplement that personal development and learning process.
What I'm hearing, Phil, is that you're a big proponent for community in that sense, whereby bringing people together just has positive outcomes, and whether that means just one-on-one with yourself, or bringing in the wider community of your mentees or other people that are kind of shown as kind of key leaders in business. I think there's so much to be said around spending your time around like-minded people. I think especially as business owners, I think we'll all agree that there are people sometimes in our lives that are drains, and some others that are radiators. And if you can spend more time around the radiators that we have, it just makes so much more difference. Do you see that? And I guess from your own personal view and with the people that you work with, around just the benefit of spending your time around proactive, positive people?
I would really agree with that. And something that I cover within my coaching is how much you do expose yourself to negative influences, particularly during COVID. How much of the news you're watching, what you're taking in from a social media perspective. You've got to keep your head in the game, and you've got to keep it focused. during the first lockdown in particular, when COVID was new to everybody, I was running weekly group sessions with my clients on top of my normal coaching sessions, and I just laid it on extra because for me it was about mindset, focus, going into the weekend feeling positive, and that was an upbeat session that was really focusing on the actions they needed to take on top of coaching, because that sense of overwhelm when COVID first hit was huge, absolutely huge for people. And what I need my clients to do is I need them to think with clarity, I need them to be focused, I need them to know exactly what they need to be doing, and we've got to remove any sense of overwhelm. So creating a business community has been so important to me over the last 2 years, getting clients together, introducing them to other people within the business community. I'm a big fan of East Anglia, right? I've only lived here 6 years, but we've got some amazing businesses, not just businesses that I coach, but outside within the wider community. And I think that business owners working together and sharing the success stories, last 12 months have been challenging, but there are some really amazing things going on in the business community at the moment. People that are recruiting, building bigger teams, having great growth. We need to hear more of that, I feel. And I think what that will do is help with that mindset even further.
Yeah. I think also, you know, a sort of an interesting question would be, you know, for a lot of people, Phil, you are kind of leading them through their business. You are the person that's arranging these extra Zoom calls to make sure that they're okay, making sure they're on top of things. I'd be interested to know kind of how do you ensure yourself that you kind of can be there and serve in the best way that you can? Are there key things that you do throughout the day? Are there key things that you know are good for you? Tell me a little bit about kind of your journey through that and kind of what you do to kind of keep yourself at your best.
That's a great question. And just to be clear, I'm a coach, but I also have the same vulnerabilities as everybody else, right? So let's just be absolutely clear on this. I have a coach myself, and some people, and I pay for that coach. Some people are surprised by that, but to be congruent with what I coach my clients on, I need to be learning myself, and I need to be looking after myself.
Yeah.
So particularly during this lockdown, massive focus for me around physical health, how much I'm looking after my mental health in terms of exercise. I've freed up some more time so that I can go for walks, get the clarity that I need to be on top of my game within coaching. Diet is a really key part of what I'm working on now as well. I talk to my clients around that. But the coaching for me and the learnings I take on, I've really stepped up for the first part of this year in particular, and I'll continue throughout this year. Last year, I had a coach last year and I was on webinars myself, but this year I'm stepping up even more because I need to give even more focus to my performance to make sure I'm maximizing my client's performance. So, you know, as a coach, you don't stop learning, you don't stop looking after yourself. That will affect, if you're not careful, your client's performance.
And I think people expect that. I think, you know, if you want the coach that's being coached, you want the photographer that's getting photographs done on themselves. You know, I think you have to, you know, practice what you preach in that way. You know, if you feel there's a benefit in the service that you offer, why wouldn't you be using that yourself? I think that's so key. And it's, you know, we've spoken around what to look out for when looking for a coach, or indeed any kind of service provider. Look at the way in which they value the service that they offer, and is it a part of their life? And I think that's really kind of key, and a little kind of tip into, you know, to get some of the goodness out of this stuff. You work with lots of different companies, as we'd mentioned, and I'm guessing you've seen them go from point A to point B, and then, you know, maybe they're still on that journey. Without kind of mentioning names, or what has been the kind of really proud moments for you, maybe with some of the clients that you work with, those moments that have kind of validated why you do what you do, and some of these key things that are, you know, evidently so important to you. I'm sure there's a few, but if you wouldn't mind just sharing a couple, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think instances where you've helped saved personal relationships as a result of getting control of the business. You know, I think we talked about that earlier, the impact of running a business can have on a marriage and relationships. Seeing instances where coaching has had a positive impact personally there, you know, I'm a family man myself. I'm married. I've got a young family. You know, nobody wants to see a family ripped apart as a result of running a business. So I think the instances where, you know, coaching has helped, maybe as a byproduct, but certainly had an impact on it, I think is incredibly valuable. I think that to see personal development around behaviors and how people change for the better, which again links with personal relationships, but to see people then become more present with their family based on being able to switch off because they've got control of their business.
Yeah.
And then seeing people, have those family holidays, with their family, instead of being on the mobile the whole time, they're actually playing with their kids and having fun and drinking cocktails, whatever it might be. I know we can't do that at the moment, but that for me is, I get such a satisfaction out of that as a coach. And then when you see the employment that is created through the growth as well, and I've been grateful to coach a number of businesses that have recruited a number of roles even during the pandemic. That's great to see because that's having a wider impact on the business community. So for me, that's really what is the reasons why I love what I'm doing. Did I come into coaching because of that to start off with? I think I'd be wrong if I said that was. I think that I came into coaching because it was to help me with some of the personal things I wanted to do. Like, that's just being open and candid about it. But what I've learned to love about coaching is helping people do and achieve the things that I've achieved through becoming a coach, and that impact on being more present with the family. That's why I do what I do. And yes, business growth is great. Yes, seeing people double their growth, maybe go through 200% growth. But for me, it's the impact on what it does for them personally. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. That's so indicative with a lot of the conversations that I have on the podcast. And, I can relate to that myself. And that, initially what I thought running sort of and working with clients would be, and sort of the benefits that will have, the actual things that kind of get me up and get me out of bed working with clients today is that person that maybe you spoke with on that first instance who, in my example, absolutely hated having their photographs taken and weren't willing to put themselves out, even though you knew they had a fantastic product or service, and that, it was just screaming out for them to just step up to the plate and do that. And then you go through that experience, and then, they have a great experience, and then you see them going off and they're doing talks and they're doing all this other stuff. And that's the beauty in it. And I think you're right in that it's not necessarily something that we thought we'd be into when we first started these projects or these businesses, but they're the real things that kind of lift us and keep us going, especially through these times as well, knowing that you're kind of helping people, and also it's not just business related, as you say. Everything that you just mentioned there was stuff with these knock-on effects, these enhancements to our lifestyle and our families, and that's what's important. Sorry, you're going to say?
No, sorry to cut across you. I mean, I had an instance this year with a young entrepreneur, first year of setting up a business, young gentleman, and in his first year, he's now taking his first member of staff.
Yeah,
and even things like that, it isn't about necessarily just the bigger businesses for me. But when I see that and particularly see his potential, for me, it's so satisfying because I know that he's going to be a huge success. Yeah. And to see that first process, and we all know what it's like when you first take your first person on, it's a massive step as a business owner. I just get a huge kick out of that, for him and what that's going to create for his family. So those emotions for me, that all comes about from a caring aspect as a coach, which is comes back to wanting to see them develop, see their business develop, and see their life develop.
So Phil, this podcast is called Make Today Count. Reason for that being is that, my aim is that people will be engaged with maybe new conversations on topics maybe they haven't mentioned or haven't spoken about before, and get a sense of what it's like. And then maybe they might want to go and pursue that, and take on those tools, those mindsets, that information. And the role of the podcast was that through these conversations, they could be actionable content, which the next day, if they want to go and take this further, they can do that. I know that for a lot of these things, it's especially with coaching, it's such a wider subject. But if someone's listening to this and they think, maybe, coaching is something that I want to do, what would you kind of say would be a good kind of first step that they could take tomorrow? Not maybe to take action, but just to maybe get them in the right mindset to start those conversations. What would you say?
Think back to why you set the business up in the first instance. Take the time out to reflect and say, what was I trying to achieve when I first set this business up? Because I said earlier on, you can easily forget that. So I think first of all, create some reflection. Then think about, is that still your goal? That first purpose you had for setting the business up, is that still your goal, or has the goal changed? What is it you're trying to achieve? What are the values that are really important to you? What is the business trying to enable? And I think that when you get perspective on that, you can then start to understand, actually, I've got a really big goal here and I'm not sure how to achieve it. And that's maybe then the time to have a conversation with me or a coach to then talk about how you're going to get there. It could be that you've already achieved what you've wanted, set up to do, and you're happy with that. In which case, there might be no purpose in speaking to a coach.
Yeah.
You know, and I firmly believe that not everybody needs a coach. It fundamentally is down to where you are now, where you want to go. Do you need to help getting there? And do you want to get there quicker? Because that's what coaching enables.
Yeah, definitely. So Phil, you're supporting the businesses that you're working with at the moment through the pandemic. I'm sure there's lots of ties in with that. What else are you kind of working on at the moment? Anything that people can kind of look out for going forward?
Yeah, so I'm running 2 webinars a month that are completely free. You haven't got to come into a coaching program with me. We've got one coming up next Friday, which is all about stop boring your team with long, unproductive meetings, which I think is an interesting title in itself. We've all done more meetings on Zoom than ever before. And those, we vary the topics, but some of them will be around how you manage your time. Some of them will be around sales, marketing, team development, culture, productivity, that sort of stuff. So anyone's able to come along to those webinars. They're on my LinkedIn profile. I mention them across, or you can get in contact with me directly via LinkedIn or any other social media platforms, and we can send you a regular newsletter to get you invited to those. I'm also about to relaunch the micro growth program. We've had 2 cohorts this year, and I'm about to launch a new one in April that's specifically for micro businesses. That's a group coaching program. So we're developing that. And then also we've redefined something that I've been doing for quite a while, which is quarterly planning sessions, which my one-to-one clients come, but also those that aren't in a regular coaching program can come along to as well. And that's the ability to come along once a quarter, get clarity around your goals for the next quarter and build a plan. So we're working along those lines at the moment. And I'm also working with a number of partners around laying on some speaking slots. I do work with New Anglia Growth Hub, and I also do work with Federation of Small Businesses, where again, it's all about providing some free business education to support the community.
Amazing. And I'll put all those links in the show notes as well. So if you're listening to this and you want to get involved, you can click through there. Best place to find you online, would it be kind of your website, or where's the best place to connect with you, Phil?
I'd go LinkedIn. So contact me on LinkedIn. You can message me directly. That comes through to me. And then my PA can manage that in terms of if we need to set a discussion up. So the best route would be LinkedIn. If you want my email address, it's philipbudd@actioncoach.com. And that would be the 2 ways. So getting in contact LinkedIn or emailing me direct at philipbudd@actioncoach.com.
Perfect. You know, you mentioned it before when you were speaking about your community and how you like to bring people together in gratitude. Gratitude is hugely important to me, and it's like, how I like to end each podcast. So Phil, just to say thank you for your time today. Thank you for all the work we do in the world. We have mutual friends and colleagues, which I know have had so much of a great experience from working with you and the work that you put in the world. So thank you for that. And just thank you for your time today. It's been really great to speak to you.
Great talking to you too.
So guys, I hope that's been a good conversation for you. Again, if you've been thinking about business coaching, I hope that's kind of sparked some things inside of you, and maybe it might be the right thing for you, or maybe at another time. But like I say, if you want to get involved with Phil, you can find all the links on the show notes page. Also, if you haven't already done so, I'd love you to leave us a review. So wherever you listen to this podcast, be it Spotify or iTunes, or even on your Echo Dot on your Amazon Alexa, please do so. And also, if you'd like to, you can get in touch with either both Phil or myself. You know, what has been prevalent in this conversation? What has been that kind of spark moment that you've really noticed from the conversation today? Would love to hear your thoughts. So please do get in touch. And also, if you're looking for a proactive, forward-thinking area of the internet where you want to learn and build a personal brand to be proud of, head over to the Elevate community over on Facebook. We're a small but well-formed team of people from all different areas of business who really want to push themselves and really want to create an amazing brand. But until next time, I've been Ross Dean. This has been Make Today Count, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.